Maleficent, the Dark Fairy, is the main antagonist of the 1959 Disney animated classic Sleeping Beauty. Voiced by the late actress Eleanor Audley, Maleficent is one of the most misunderstood Disney villains of all time. Eleanor Audley was known for her iconic evil cackle and her sultry yet commanding voice that is timeless in the female villain canon. Eleanor also voiced Lady Tremaine, but her voice as Maleficent remains immediately recognizable. We're going to look into all the canonical information we know about Maleficent's life in the most accurate chronological timeline I could create based on all the available source material, and it's certainly not perfect. Maleficent is one of the most complex Disney characters, and I promise if you watch this video, you will never see Sleeping Beauty or Maleficent in the same way ever again. Before we go into her life, starting at her birth, we're going to have a bit of a long intro here, so feel free to skip it if you don't want to know all the background information. You can find the timestamps in the description section below. Maleficent's role in the original Charles Perrault story, La Belle au Bois Dormant, or The Sleeping Beauty in the Wood, is quite different from the Disney versions. In the Perrault version of the story, Maleficent is based on the character the Old Fairy. The Old Fairy puts a curse on the miracle baby of the king and queen for the child to prick her hand with a spindle and die, and after her curse, she's pretty much gone from the narrative. While in the Little Briar Rose version by the Grimm brothers, after the king and queen have their baby, they invite everyone to a feast. There were 13 wise women in the kingdom, but only 12 golden plates for dinner. So someone had to stay home. The one who wasn't invited puts a curse on Little Briar Rose, daughter to the king and queen, to prick her hand with a spindle and die, and after her curse, she's pretty much gone from the narrative. Disney brought a lot more life to this character, and Maleficent took on a life of her own in the Disney lore. Like all Disney characters, Maleficent went through several design changes before having the iconic look that we see today. Her design is dragon-inspired. Her horns and design are credited mostly to the legendary Disney animator Mark Davis. But Maleficent certainly doesn't have one design, so this is where the discrepancies will start. There are multiple versions of her and her life in the animated film compared to the live-action film and her family in Descendants. There's Kingdom Hearts games, other Disney games, Disney books, Disney documentaries, and other Disney media. Maleficent even appears in The Simpsons. And in this video, we're going to talk about all of it. You can find all of the sources used for this video below in the description section. So before we start, there are two main timelines of Maleficent's life. There's the live-action timeline, where Maleficent is not that evil, and then there's the animated Sleeping Beauty to Descendants timeline, where Maleficent is evil, was pretty much always evil, and will likely always be at least somewhat evil. Even though we will be using some features from the Angelina Jolie version of Maleficent, the sole focus of the timeline in this video is the timeline where Maleficent is quite evil. However, if you are interested in the Angelina Jolie live-action Disney Universe timeline, then you need to read the companion books. Heart of the Moors, an original Maleficent Mistress of Evil novel by Holly Black. This book takes place between the first and second live-action Maleficent movies, and Holly Black is an incredible author who has a lot of experience writing about the Fae, so definitely worth a read if you love Maleficent and if you love the Fae, fairy tales, and Fae lore. There is also The Curse of Maleficent, A Tale of a Sleeping Beauty by Elizabeth Rudnick, which tells Aurora's perspective of her own life and is a prequel to the Maleficent live-action movies. Before we start on Maleficent's life, it's important to discuss the value of a movie like Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty is a visual masterpiece that still holds up today. But at the time, it was a significant gamble for Disney. Like so significant that this movie almost bankrupted the entire company. The film's production took almost a decade, during which the 1950s marked a golden era for Disney. with Alice in Wonderland in 1951, Peter Pan in 1953, Lady and the Tramp in 1955, as well as projects like Disneyland being designed and built and then opened in 1955. The studio wanted to return to that princess, prince, fantasy-centered, classic fairy tale narrative. But the challenge lay in creating something fresh, as many elements of Sleeping Beauty, sleeping princesses, castles, dragons had already been explored. Design played a crucial role in the making of Sleeping Beauty, with bold choices and the influence of artists like Mary Blair. While some of Blair's distinct style is evident in some Disney films, her vision wasn't fully realized on screen, leading Walt Disney yearning for more detailed and more elaborate designs. Walt Disney's command was for a moving tapestry with intricate detail in every frame and carefully composed images. Ivan Durrell, the background artist, brought life to the medieval-inspired aesthetic with layered and intricate Gothic elements, capturing the essence of the Renaissance works. He brought to life the forest landscapes, the lush fields, and the architectural visions that matched Walt's expectations. If you're interested in the primary sources of design inspiration from Sleeping Beauty, Ivan Earle used the old calendar, Très Riche Heures, the Book of Hours, which is the most famous example of Gothic design that exists today. You'll see in Très Riche Heures that there are always multiple levels of background, foreground, and scenes, as well as perspective and different horizontal and vertical levels. So this made the movie Sleeping Beauty very difficult to draw, animate, plan, and color. There was actually a rebellion from some animators over the unique color palette that Ivan Durrell used in some scenes. But Walt Disney took his side for the most part. All issues were resolved and compromises were made to strike a balance between Ivan Earle's desired design and the traditional Disney style. The film's animation showcased contemporary design for its time, elongating characters and utilizing levels of perspective. You can see this with the long staves, the height of the castle, and the layers upon layers. There are impressive stylistic effects such as sparkles and glitter, which added a refined touch to the visuals. Sleeping Beauty left a mark on pop culture with its exceptional design and enduring appeal. It was the number 2 highest grossing film for its time. The current number 2 highest grossing film of all time is Avengers Endgame. That's how popular Sleeping Beauty was. Adjusting for inflation, Sleeping Beauty is still the 340th highest grossing film of all time at the box office, and it's more than 60 years old. This movie is so successful because of all the working parts and components: the animation, the acting, the music. The musical score of Sleeping Beauty was based on Chomsky's ballet, creating an enduring connection between the film and its iconic music. For instance, Once Upon a Dream, that's from Chomsky's version, Act 1 of the ballet, where Aurora turns 16. The voice acting for Sleeping Beauty was a powerhouse team. Mary Costa's clean and crisp voice embodied the fairy tale princess, while Helene Stanley provided live-action reference for Aurora. And then you have our girl Eleanor Audley, who not only voiced Maleficent, but she provided most of the live-action references for her as well. Eleanor also did this exact same process of providing the live-action references and the voice for Lady Tremaine. Alice Davis, a fashion designer, played a significant role in creating Aurora's costume for the dancing sequence, ensuring that it matched the vision of exactly what had been drawn. Sleeping Beauty has some remarkable action sequences, such as the memorable dragon fight orchestrated by Wooly Reitherman, a World War II veteran. The climactic battle between Prince Philip and Maleficent remains one of the most powerful in all of Disney's history. Even my favorite animator, the legend himself Don Bluth, known for his exceptional works such as Fern Gully and Secret of Nim, also contributed to the film's animation. Sleeping Beauty stands as a testament to Disney's commitment to creating enduring animated films. The film's production was an expensive and time-consuming endeavor, making it almost impossible to replicate its scale. And not to mention, there were so many legendary animators working on this film. So it's very possible we will never have another movie like Sleeping Beauty. It's a timeless classic. And if you cannot tell, I'm quite a fan of Sleeping Beauty and Maleficent, so I'm excited for this one, y'all. I'd like to thank you really quickly for taking time to watch. Maleficent had a harrowing and painful life, and we're gonna start at the very, very beginning. So let's get into the life of Maleficent, the Dark Fairy. Maleficent was born in the fairylands, but she was never like the other fairies. While most fae had parents who raised them, it was the crows that flew from the hollow tree that she was born from. The other fairies found Maleficent to be strange and disturbing to look at. She had no wings and she was born with horns. The other fairies thought she couldn't possibly be a fairy. Her parents didn't even want her, so she must be horrible. The other fae tried to justify their cruelty towards Maleficent. The fae claimed she belonged to the crows, and everyone knew crows were evil, and so Maleficent had to be evil as well. It was the other fae who gave her the name Maleficent, a name soaked in blood. The crows and the crows alone raised Maleficent for several years of her youth. When she was hungry, they would steal cakes and cookies from the other fae. When she was cold, the crows would retrieve warm clothes to fit her small body. They were her best friends, her parents, and her only company. Maleficent only spoke to the crows and the crows alone until Nanny came to find her. Nanny, who you may recognize from my last video, Life of Ursula the Sea Witch, raises Maleficent. If you're not familiar with Nanny the Fairy, Nanny is an old witch of legends, a magical being who is the head mistress of the Fairy Academy and is the sister of the fairy godmother. Nanny is an incredibly powerful witch with the ability to read minds, and Nanny is the nanny of Princess Tulip Morningstar, whose father is the king of the Morningstar Kingdom. Nanny, the one of legends, finds Maleficent in the hollow tree. She tries to speak to the young girl, but Maleficent just screeches at her. Nanny realizes Maleficent never learned how to speak properly or even cry. Nanny is quite perturbed that Maleficent has been left alone, and she asks her about her parents. It is difficult for the young Maleficent to try to speak, but Nanny is kind and patient with her. Maleficent tells her she was raised by the crows, and that's all she knows. Nanny offers to adopt her, and Maleficent refuses because she won't leave her crows behind. Nanny says the crows can come too, and Maleficent skeptically agrees. She follows Nanny home with a giant flock of black birds skeptically circling overhead. Thus begins the wondrous part of Maleficent's childhood, where she lives with Nanny in a homey, gingerbread-esque cottage. Maleficent's hollow crow tree is magically planted right in front of Nanny's house. Nanny requires the windows to remain open for the crows to fly freely, and even builds a treehouse for Maleficent to hang out with her crows. Roughly 1 year later, after being acclimated to a more appropriate lifestyle, Nanny suggests that Maleficent enrolls into the Fairy Academy to learn her magic. Maleficent, who is currently feeding sweets to her crow Opal, is confused. She says that she isn't a fairy, but Nanny assures her that she truly is. Maleficent is enrolled into the Fairy Academy, but she isn't accepted by most of the students there, nor the other instructors. Her classes weren't what she expected, and she excels in everything she learns much more quickly than her classmates. She isn't able to participate in flying because she's wingless, so she reads every book she can find, including ones that Nanny thought she had hidden away carefully. Maleficent learns to love reading. She realizes you can learn how to do anything, perform any magic spell, learn any magic specialty, all by reading books. Maleficent starts to teach herself a variety of forms of magic, including opening her mind to be able to see through the eyes of crows. Incredible lands she couldn't even dream of were revealed to her through the eyes of her crow companions. Her crows and her ravens brought her gifts of all kinds from across the lands and across the seas. They were very loyal to her, and she was very loving to them. During her school years, she is frequently bullied by other fairies, including Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. They think Maleficent is weird because of her horns and her strange appearance. They make petty comments at her, telling her she's a wingless freak, and asking teachers if they can tell her to cover up her disgusting horns. One day in class, she's being bullied, and Nanny, the head mistress, yells at her teacher and chews out her class for their cruelty towards Maleficent. But the damage was done. Maleficent felt a burning sensation inside her. Her body becomes engulfed in green flames, and she blacks out, only coming back to in her treehouse. Maleficent starts screaming that she's sorry. She didn't mean to hurt anyone. Nanny appears beside her, telling her she didn't hurt anyone. She just used fire teleportation for the first time. Maleficent, a very young fairy of only 7 years of age, used a teleport spell, an incredibly difficult form of magic for any fairy, including Nanny herself. And Maleficent performed this travel charm impeccably. Nanny tells her that for special fairies like herself and Maleficent, that 7 is a very special age. Nanny informs Maleficent that she keeps her own wings hidden because she doesn't like the judgment from the other fairies. She tells Maleficent that she's finally old enough to learn important magic that isn't just granting wishes and waving wands. And she tells her if she ever feels that burning sensation again, it's always okay to come back to her, and always okay to come back to your safe place. Maleficent continues to learn about various forms of magic. She spends a lot of time rereading notes and books from 3 witches, Ruby, Lucinda, and Martha. Maleficent is very interested in dark magic, including controlling spells that are very painful to their victim. She tells herself she would never try these things herself. She's just interested in them. And while her classmates are learning basic witch spells, she's learning real magic, important magic, that she can use when she leaves the fairylands. Nanny eventually takes Maleficent out of school, and the young Maleficent continues her studies. Almost 9 years later, one fine afternoon while Nanny and Maleficent are enjoying tea and sweets, Maleficent asks Nanny if she can sit for the fairy exams. Nanny is perplexed, wondering why she would want to participate in the exams when her magic is already such a high level. Nanny tells her that even though she's about to be the proper age to take the exams at 16, she could have easily passed at age 10. Maleficent is about to turn 16, so she can decide if she wants to take the exams anyway and show the other fairies what she can do. She even tells her new bird friend Diablo excitedly that she's so excited that she gets to take the fairy exams. It is noted that Diablo is a raven and not a crow. Diablo and Maleficent go to the front yard to practice wish granting for the exam. Then, Nanny's sister, the fairy godmother, arrives at the cottage. Nanny prepares tea for her, knowing she's not here for an innocent reason. The fairy godmother questions why Maleficent could be practicing wish granting, and then says it isn't appropriate for Maleficent to take the fairy exams, so she doesn't need to do that. Nanny defends Maleficent, saying she, as head mistress of the academy, will make an exception for her ex-student to take the exams, and she can prove that it's almost Maleficent's 16th birthday using her magic. But the fairy godmother claims that she's seen the future using her own magic, and she knows Maleficent will just cause everyone pain and heartache. Nanny and the fairy godmother get into a huge argument about Maleficent. Nanny yells at her sister for allowing a fairy like Maleficent to be abandoned in the tree, and the fairy godmother warns her that she should have never taken her from the hollow tree. After the fairy godmother leaves in a huff of anger, Maleficent tells Nanny she sent Diablo to check the area because she sensed 3 powerful witches. And Nanny tells her that they're her birthday guests, the 3 odd sisters. Maleficent is excited. The witches she idolized from all her spellbooks are already on the way to meet her. The 3 odd sisters arrive. Maleficent is very excited to meet the 3 witches, and they tell her of their magic mirror, and they can read her mind, just like Nanny can. The 3 odd sisters tell Maleficent that she isn't just a fairy, she's also a witch. They have a lovely evening together before Maleficent goes off to her treehouse for the evening. She waits in the treehouse instead of going to sleep because Diablo never returned. The next morning, the morning of the fairy exams, Diablo has still yet to return, so Maleficent sends Opal, another trusted Avery companion, to search for him. Nanny calls Maleficent down to a large breakfast spread and gives her a present for her 16th birthday. The gift is a lovely set of black robes with silver embroidered crows and ravens. Maleficent loves the gift and thanks her mother for the gift. She's come to love Nanny like a mother. Just as she goes to leave for the exam, Nanny reminds her to cover up her horns. Nanny and many other characters often comment on Maleficent's natural beauty, but even Nanny never accepted her strange appearance. Maleficent feels irked by this comment, but she shakes it off, wraps up her horns, and teleports to the exam. In the main gardens of the fairylands, the fairy exams are about to take place. A giant fountain of the tree lord Oberon, king of the fairies, is in the middle of a lush and luxurious garden. Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, who are also taking their fairy exams today, question Maleficent's presence and taunt her about her abilities. Only 3 winners are selected for the fairy exams, so most of the other fae are scared to enter against Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. The 3 good fairies ask if they can take the exam together. The fairy godmother agrees, and Maleficent points out that if the 3 good fairies take the exam together, that their passing or failing is one, so then 2 other fae should pass as well. Before the fairy godmother can even try to protest, all the eligible fairies fly in because they feel like they actually might have a chance now. Maleficent gave all the other fairies hope. If the 3 strongest fairies in the whole school, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, were counted as only 1 entry, then there were 2 other spots open. Fairies of all shapes and sizes from all across the lands flew down to compete in the fairy exams. The blue fairy comes forward and tells Maleficent that she wishes that she never dropped out of school. Not everyone is like Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. Maleficent feels pleased and relieved, yet confused by the blue fairy's comments. She wishes they would have become closer as friends while she was still in school. The blue fairy then enters the fairy exam, along with the many other fairies. The fairy exam rules are as follows. Each fairy is given a charge in a form of magic. That charge is a projected simulation of a person or entity who needs help, and you must use benevolent magic to help them with their issues. The simulation is magic, and the events inside the exam are not supposed to be reality, even if they're based on real or living people. Maleficent enters her exam, and her charge is none other than Snow White. And even though her exam is supposed to be about Snow White, Maleficent also sees Snow White's mother, the Evil Queen, and the Evil Queen's father tormenting her from beyond the grave. The Evil Queen's father cannot rest his soul because her own mother died at birth, and her father won't let her have peace. He wants her to kill Snow White. So Maleficent banishes Snow White's grandfather straight to Hades, breaking the magic mirror in the process. She comes out of her exam. She's the first to finish, and she waits for the other fairies to finish one by one coming out of their charges. Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather are the last to finish, and when they do, they immediately start screaming at Maleficent. The 3 fairies claim she sabotaged them in their charge, but Maleficent denies this. It's the 3 against 1, and so the end of the exams is deemed unclear for the time being. Later, the fairy godmother and Nanny are discussing the results over tea. Fairy godmother claims that Maleficent should fail. She didn't realize her charge was Snow White, and instead she helped her mother, the Evil Queen. Nanny defends her, saying this was a good way to protect the daughter and her mother. Nanny and the fairy godmother continue their discussion when the 3 odd sisters appear with their little sister Circe. Young Circe is in tears. Maleficent runs after them, asking where her tree is and asking where her crows are. The fairy godmother scolds Maleficent for scaring Circe, but the 3 odd sisters come to Maleficent's defense. It was Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather who attacked young Circe. Circe explains that she saw that the 3 good fairies had a secret. They had stolen Maleficent's crow Diablo and was hiding him away to upset Maleficent before her fairy exam, meaning the fairy godmother had told them that Maleficent was going to take the fairy exam the day prior, right after having tea with Nanny. Circe, as a charge for the fairy exam, had disguised herself as Maleficent to see if the 3 good fairies would help her find Diablo. Instead of helping, the 3 fairies accused Circe, disguised as Maleficent, of trying to disrupt their own exam, and they attacked her with silver sparks that set the crow tree on fire. Circe did not realize when the 3 good fairies used their magic that it was so powerful that the tree they spelled was the actual crow tree, and crows flew everywhere, some badly hurt, and Circe didn't know where Diablo or Opal was. Maleficent turns a deep shade of green after hearing Circe's story. It is revealed in Mistress of All Evil by Serena Valentino that Maleficent's skin can change color slightly, and the color depends on her mood. We see her skin change frequently in Sleeping Beauty. A pale gray or lavender tone means that she's happy or somewhat worried. A pale green tone is more of her base tone, and a darker green means she's either deeply distraught or completely enraged. The three fairies continue to provoke Maleficent. They refuse to tell her where Diablo is unless she renounces her ability to become a fairy. Nanny threatens them, and the fairy godmother threatens Nanny. An all-out battle is about to break out when Maleficent starts to feel very, very hot. That warm feeling from the pit of her stomach is back, stronger than ever. Nanny tells Maleficent how Nanny saw her future. Nanny saw that she would destroy everything that she loves, and she still took a chance on Maleficent. The feeling within Maleficent grows stronger and stronger. It burns hotter and deeper throughout her body, and this time, the feeling was different. A bright and blinding green fire exploded from Maleficent, and everything went dark. In her full dragon form, Maleficent had destroyed everything in the fairylands and almost everyone that lived there. She lived for years, thinking that she had killed her mother and everyone she had ever loved and everyone that had ever loved her. Maleficent continued to live as a dragon for years, traveling across the lands. But everywhere she went, men would appear trying to test their strength against her. Every brave knight wants to slay a dragon, so when talk of a dragon reached a town, she had to leave for her own safety. She lived life with constant anxiety, fleeing from land to land, flying across lands, running from everyone that wanted to kill her when they didn't even know who she was. She eventually went back to her dark fairy form. It was so unbearably physically painful to turn into a dragon that she was scared it would be painful to turn back as well, which is why she lived so long as a dragon. She took refuge in an old crumbling castle on the Forbidden Mountain, whose previous owner was Hades himself. The minions of the castle thought Maleficent was sent by Hades, so they followed her every whim. Maleficent's birds stayed with her. It was her birds that gave her the strength to turn back into a fairy. Eventually, the three odd sisters find Maleficent. They come to visit her many times. They try to convince her to come and live with them, but Maleficent refuses. Maleficent spends many years alone in her castle, enjoying the books and trinkets her crows and ravens bring her from all the lands and all the kingdoms. She learns knowledge of faraway places and sees them secondhand through the eyes of her birds that soar the skies, but she never leaves the castle. She was too scared to try any spells, especially not teleportation spells. The three odd sisters continue to visit Maleficent. Through time, Maleficent learns that Nanny is still alive, and Maleficent resents Nanny for never coming to find her. But the three odd sisters found her, and they continue to build a loving connection with Maleficent. They refer to her as their lovely dragon fairy witch. They offer to perform a spell to give Maleficent a daughter to take care of. At first, Maleficent refuses. She has her crows and ravens, not to mention her books. She doesn't need a daughter, but the three odd witches continue to press the issue, saying they have spent many years perfecting this exact spell. Maleficent finally agrees, and several weeks later, on the day of the spell, she leaves the castle for the first time in many years. Maleficent feels anxious to go travel to the three odd witches' cabin, even though it's very close by. Even a short distance feels like a long haul for her. She summons all her bird companions, and I mean all of them, to keep her company on her travels. It's noted that the witch's cabin can travel all around the world, but there's a charm in place on Maleficent's castle from the previous owner that does not allow the three odd sisters to place their cottage on the Forbidden Mountain or the surrounding area, so Maleficent has to travel there herself. While in the forest remembers her destruction, and it comes to life to attack her. The vines and forest come alive, grabbing her and pulling her down. She remembers what Nanny told her long ago. If she ever found herself in danger, she could use magic to bring herself to safety, and she teleports to the three sisters' cottage. Inside the cottage, a ritual is performed, and a baby appears to be given to Maleficent as a daughter. Maleficent names the girl Aurora, her shining light in the darkness. But for Aurora, the light in the darkness to be born, the goodness in Maleficent had to die. There's a bit of a discrepancy here in the story. While the live-action timeline is more clear that Maleficent and King Stefan were intimate with one another, the animated and book timeline doesn't give us those details. But this timeline does let us know that Aurora is born from Maleficent, so technically speaking, either way, Aurora is Maleficent's daughter. Maleficent didn't love the baby that she was given because her goodness and love was taken away, so she gave the baby to Nanny for safekeeping. Nanny thinks Maleficent is purely evil for giving away a baby. She assumes Maleficent found or stole this baby, and Nanny wants to make sure that the baby's taken care of. And so, the baby Aurora is set to be a charge for fairies so she can be granted wishes to give her a good life. And around this exact same time, the blue fairy was set to have her charge, but she's assigned to a little boy, and Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather are set to have Aurora as their charge instead. Aurora then becomes Princess Aurora, daughter to the king and queen, a young girl set to have a perfect fairy tale life. But Maleficent couldn't stop thinking about the small princess. If Aurora had a part of Maleficent inside her, then Princess Aurora could become evil. Maleficent had to stop Princess Aurora from ever following in her footsteps. And Maleficent decides to curse the young girl somehow, so that she won't make it past her 16th birthday. On Maleficent's own 16th birthday, she destroyed the fairylands. She has to make sure history doesn't repeat itself. On the day of Aurora's christening, the three good fairies arrive to each give a gift to the princess. They were all invited, of course, but Maleficent was not invited. Maleficent arrives to the christening fashionably late in a long black and purple cloak. It is noted here that her horns are wrapped up, and you cannot see their original colors. Maleficent asks if she wasn't invited by mistake. When she realizes it's purposeful, she feels upset and angry. She might have given a different kind of gift to young Aurora if she was invited. We don't really know. And according to Disney Villains, The Essential Guide, an invitation was apparently sent out to Maleficent, but she never got it because the person who delivered the invitation was burnt to a crisp. I wonder who could have done such a thing. Maleficent curses Aurora for her to prick her finger on a spin wheel and die on her 16th birthday. But the good fairy Merryweather had yet to give her gift. And even though her magic was not strong enough to reverse Maleficent's magic, Merryweather was able to alter the spell so that Aurora would fall asleep instead of dying, sending her to the dreamscape. And the spell can only be broken with true love's kiss. The three good fairies then take young Aurora into hiding to live in the dense forest under the name Briar Rose. The three good fairies vow to watch Aurora until she's old enough to be wed so that the curse will be broken. Maleficent returns to the castle, where the years quickly pass by. She sends her minions to look for the princess, but they are never successful. They search the mountain, the forest, the towns. For years, they search for the princess, Aurora. After almost 16 years of searching, the minions tell her they looked everywhere, even inside all the cradles. It's then that Maleficent realizes her minions have been looking for a baby for 16 years. And they haven't been looking for a child who's now aged into a teen. Maleficent goes into a hysterical fit of laughter, and then she shoots purple lightning from her scepter. She blasts the minions group by group. Minions fall from the stairs, they fall on top of rocks, and many are electrified. Even Diablo looks shocked. Get it? Lightning. Shocked. Maleficent falls onto her throne dramatically. Her skin briefly turns a shade of blue before turning a gray lavender. She tells Diablo to go search for a beautiful young girl with sunshine gold hair and lips as red as a rose. She tells him that he better not fail, and he flies off on his search. Since this particular day is Princess Aurora's 16th birthday, the three good fairies have decided to bake Aurora a cake, sew her a dress, and surprise her. They sent her off to pick berries, and Aurora, now under the name Briar Rose, sings throughout the forest. I actually find it to be incredible that Maleficent, who portaled directly into the throne room of the kingdom at will, could never find Briar Rose in the forest. Beside the castle, at one point, there is literally an owl dressed in human clothes gallivanting through the forest with Aurora. But we see that Maleficent doesn't always do her own dirty work. She likes to make large, calculated moves with contingency plans. She likes to manipulate others into doing her work for her or use scouts, and she spends most of her time where it's safe. Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather are struggling with the preparations for Aurora's birthday surprise, so they decide to use magic very briefly to complete the cake, the dress, the works. But Flora and Merryweather get into a fight over if Aurora's dress should be blue or pink, and sparks fly, literally, sparks fly right out of the chimney, alerting Diablo to the location of the fairies as well as the Princess Aurora. With convenient success, Diablo returns home to inform Maleficent of the news. Aurora has already met her true love in the forest and has fallen for him, and the fairies will take her to the kingdom immediately to be betrothed. Maleficent rages in her castle, peeved that Aurora is in King Stephan's castle, and is about to take her place in the royal court for her 16th birthday. Maleficent paces in her tower, upset that she's unable to reach her friends, the three odd sisters, Lucinda, Ruby, and Martha. She has sent both a crow and raven to check in on them and hasn't heard back. Maleficent is upset and says that the odd sisters should have never trusted Ursula. Maleficent uses an enchanted mirror that was given to her by the odd sisters to try to see where the three are located. It is noted that Maleficent is not very good at mirror magic, and it's not something she tries to use often, so this was not easy for her like it would be for someone like the evil queen. Lucinda appears in the mirror to Maleficent and warns her she must get to the castle. By smoke or fire or rhyme, it doesn't matter, but she needs to get into King Stephan's castle and put the young Aurora to sleep immediately. Lucinda tells her that her powers aren't the same where she is, and that this mission is now up to just Maleficent. The three odd sisters are currently lost in the land of dreams. Maleficent's annoyed with the sisters, and she keeps trying to use the mirror to summon them. After many attempts, Maleficent becomes frustrated, and she smashes the magic mirror in a dramatic rage. She is comforted by her raven, Diablo. Maleficent then decides she will use smoke, fire, and rhyme to stoke her desires at the same time. She walks into the fireplace and chants her spell. Using smoke, she appears in the castle, hiding in the darkness of Aurora's own fireplace. She watches the princess cry. Princess Aurora just found out that she was the princess, but that's not the reason why she's crying. She is to be betrothed to the Prince Philip, but Aurora thinks that she's never met Philip, and she's in love with the man she met in the woods. In cruel irony, Princess Aurora cries about losing the love of her life. Maleficent watches the princess sob on her bed. Using fire, she beckons Aurora to her with a mystical glowing orb, and Aurora follows the orb through the darkness into the fireplace that Maleficent enchanted. Aurora is led up the stairs, and Maleficent can hear the three fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, calling for their dear Briar Rose. Maleficent blocks the fireplace, preventing the three fairies from reaching her and Aurora. And with rhyme, Maleficent completes her spell, bewitching Aurora to touch the spin wheel's spindle. Aurora falls lifeless onto the floor underneath Maleficent's cloak, and Maleficent waits several moments for the three good fairies to arrive before revealing their precious princess strewn across the stone floor. Dramatic, right? With an evil cackle and a swish of her long black cloak, Maleficent disappears into the night. Aurora remains asleep. Maleficent returns to the castle on the Forbidden Mountain. The vines surrounding the castle have a living and breathing energy on their own, and even though people think she can control nature and the forest vines completely at will, she cannot. Maleficent orders her minions to take Prince Philip to the dungeons, and the Dark Fairy travels to the Morning Star Kingdom. Instead of traveling and appearing by fire, She wanted to be polite. She knows that everyone just lost Ursula, and there were likely to be those that would mourn her death. Her crows circle overhead, and Maleficent follows their lead to give a polite signal that she's on her way. Diablo, her best friend and closest companion, was sent as a scout before Maleficent to scope out the scene before her arrival. There was wreckage left everywhere in Ursula's wake. If you watched my Life of Ursula video, you would know that Ursula used dark magic that caused quite a bit of destruction. And even though Maleficent had tried to warn the three odd sisters by descending Diablo to their cottage with an explicit warning about Ursula, it had been too late. Maleficent ponders on her old feelings for the odd sisters. She used to remember a time she felt love, but that was long, long ago. Circe, Nanny, and other members of the Morningstar Kingdom have set up a funeral for Ursula. Even though Triton was banned from coming to the Morningstar Kingdom, Athena and her mermaid sisters come to make sure their aunt is given a proper send-off. It's Athena, the eldest, who asked to make sure the mermaids were allowed to attend the funeral. The mermaids are welcome, and Circe and Nanny pay their respects at the wake. After the mermaids pay their respects with a small musical performance, the two witches, Circe and Nanny, then see Maleficent's murder of crows approaching. Aurora watches this from the dreamscape. Nanny and Circe, who are both powerful witches with the ability to manipulate mirror magic, are unable to navigate the dreamscape. And even though Aurora is no stranger to magic at this point, it's quite difficult for her to navigate the endless passages of mirrors and fates throughout the dreamscape. Aurora watches the events of her own life play out while she's asleep through the mirrors. She sees the man that she fell in love with is truly the prince after all. She sees her fairy aunts take her into the forest for hiding, and she even sees Maleficent's past and the reasons behind her intentions. While in the dreamscape, Aurora does try to test out its limits. She watches her parents sleep, but she's unable to watch their dreams. Inside the palace, Circe and Nanny question why Maleficent could be coming to the Morningstar Kingdom. Nanny recalls painful memories of Maleficent from long ago and feels guilty and shameful that she lost her daughter's love. Nanny's happy that she has other loved ones in her life, like Circe and Princess Tulip, but Maleficent was like a daughter to her. Nanny tells Circe that in her quest to change Maleficent's fate and turn her good, she gave her all the tools to become the mistress of all evil. Circe sees the memories from inside Nanny's head, and Nanny tells Princess Tulip to go study magical creatures, to see if there's potentially a magical creature that could take down Maleficent. Messages keep arriving at the Morningstar Castle from other kingdoms. Messages from crows, owls, even dragonflies, with messages and condolences for Ursula, as well as inquiries about the giant magical explosion that occurred from her destruction. And even questions about exactly what type of magic was being used to take down someone as powerful as Ursula, the Sea Witch. Nanny didn't want to deal with any of these incoming messages, but one message from her sister came as well. The fairy godmother wrote to Nanny, telling her that she would send the three fairies to come and help her deal with the odd sisters situation. Back in the dreamscape, the three odd sisters approach Aurora, who's watching Princess Tulip, her cousin, in the mirror. Aurora knows their magic is muted by the twilight magic of the dreamscape, but she's still wary of the witches. The three odd sisters start interrogating Princess Aurora on the whereabouts of their little sister, Circe. Meanwhile, Circe is searching for a way to get the witches out of the dreamscape. She's searching through every spellbook in the Morningstar Kingdom to find anything that can help. As she flips through the pages, she reflects back to her mysterious childhood. She couldn't remember her upbringing, her parents, or how her parents died. As she's reminiscing and researching, a small gray owl appears at the stained glass window. The little owl has a letter from Snow White, Circe's cousin. And yes, everyone is related. It's Disney, and everyone's related some way, somehow. Circe and Snow White are cousins, Nanny and the fairy godmother are sisters, and Princess Aurora, aka Briar Rose, is Tulip Morningstar's cousin. Princess Tulip and Nanny are in the solarium downstairs when all of a sudden the earth starts shaking. The windows and walls rattle, the ground shakes. The tree lords have arrived. Nanny reminds Tulip to be very direct when talking to the tree lords, Oberon in particular. the king of the fairies. Oberon the Tree Lord is the king of the fairies who is mentioned passively in a 2023 YouTube video made by Bonnie Lovely. Sorry, I literally could not help myself from doing that. Oberon is a giant tree lord who is larger than the literal lighthouse of the gods. Oberon is also the king of the fairies in Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. And in the live-action Maleficent timeline, Maleficent's parents are Lysander and Hermia, who are characters from Midsummer Night's Dream. Oberon, who has been here long before the time of people, was almost forgotten in time. Princess Tulip's interest in the Tree Lords since her youth has revitalized the Tree Lord Oberon. The Tree Lords were driven away by the Cyclopean giants long in the past. Oberon reads her mind and senses that she is sincere. He tells her that Maleficent destroyed the fairylands long ago, and he didn't want Tulip and her loved ones to be destroyed, so he will help protect her and her kingdom from Maleficent. Oberon sees Maleficent as a danger to himself and everyone else. Oberon continues to talk with Tulip and tells her the past of the giants, how long ago they were at war with the Cyclopean giants. The Tree Lords traveled to the fairylands where the Fae were under constant attack from ogres. They helped the Fae against the ogres, then fell into a deep slumber when they were fully awoken again. After hearing more tree stories, Tulip returns to the Morningstar Castle, where Maleficent appears from the fireplace. Maleficent isn't welcomed. The group reflects on the past, where Maleficent destroyed the fairylands, but Maleficent doesn't really care. She points out that everyone is still alive, that the odd witches had spirited everyone away, and while the lands were destroyed, they had all survived. Circe, hearing about the old tales, about the fairy exam, and about her childhood, says she doesn't remember any of this. She has no memories of her childhood, and her sisters, the three odd witches, never answer her questions. Maleficent then interrogates Nanny. Why did Nanny never look for her? Nanny explains that she tried, but she never found her because the fairylands were destroyed. Nanny said that she thought Maleficent was dead, and she wasn't able to detect Maleficent in her dragon form. So yeah, Nanny, the one of legends, powerful witch and fairy, was unable to locate a giant flying dragon around the lands. Got it. Moving on. Maleficent then reveals to Circe that she isn't sisters with the Odd Sisters. She was created by them. She's technically their daughter. Circe goes to search for the answer in the castle libraries to try to understand what type of magic created her. Meanwhile, Nanny and Maleficent start arguing about how Nanny gave Maleficent's daughter Aurora to the three good fairies who hated her. Nanny failed her, but Nanny says that Maleficent only has herself to blame. Outside the castle, vines are waiting for Maleficent to leave, and the three good fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, have arrived. The fairy godmother arrives to greet them. But Oberon, the Tree Lord, calls her out for being cruel to Maleficent. The fairy godmother and the three good fairies all apologize to the Tree Lord Oberon. Oberon hopes that Maleficent still has good within her, and that there's still a chance to save her somehow. Back inside, Nanny apologizes to Maleficent, but she feels like this is an excuse. Nanny can see through time. She should have worked harder to find her, could have worked harder to see the life paths ahead, and could have worked harder to prevent disaster. But it was too late. Maleficent doesn't forgive her, and instead she starts to rage in a burst of green fire. But then, Oberon the Tree Lord grabs her through the window. He scolds her for yelling at her mother who wanted to protect her. Maleficent transforms into her dragon form. She breathes fire at Oberon in the castle, destroying vines in her wake. The Tree Lord hurls giant boulders at her, crushing one of her wings. The entire forest comes alive and pulls her down into its depths. She turns into her much smaller fairy form. She uses her staff to set the forest ablaze, and she escapes back to the safety of her castle. Maleficent, a little roughed up after running from Oberon, is back on the Forbidden Mountain. She then realizes the only way that Aurora will stay asleep forever is if her true love, Prince Philip, dies. If he kisses her, then the plan could be completely ruined. For her plan to be actualized, she will have to kill the prince. Earlier, she had told her minions to capture him, but now she had to kill him. There was no other choice. She has to make sure that Aurora stays asleep forever. When Maleficent turned 16, she destroyed the fairylands. She had to make sure her daughter didn't follow in her footsteps. She had to make sure Aurora didn't turn evil. After realizing the three good fairies have freed the prince, Maleficent takes control of the vines that she can manipulate surrounding King Stephan's castle. Merryweather chases down Diablo, turning him to stone. When Maleficent sees him unable to do her bidding, she strikes down purple lightning from the sky. She swirls dark storm clouds around the castle. The vines grow thicker, thornier, and twistier. Prince Philip slashes wildly, Maleficent laughing at him. The prince desperately slashes through the vines, trying to make his way to the castle. The three odd witches watch this from the dreamscape and cheer Maleficent on as she turns into her magnificent dragon form, the power of darkness taking over her. It is noted that it no longer hurts Maleficent to turn into the dark dragon form like it used to. She now lives for the pain and revenge energy that lurks within. The three good fairies enchant Prince Philip's sword, using an overwhelming amount of their magic in the process. Because Maleficent is so evil, the spell of goodness was super effective against her. Back in the castle, Circe finally finds the spell she was looking for, and she binds Aurora's evil potential into the mirror magic of the dreamscape. Circe can see that Maleficent was right. Aurora had her mother's blood, and had the ability to potentially turn evil one day. Which isn't important right now, because those powers are bound with mirror magic, but this exact concept actually comes back later. Circe then goes to tell Tulip and Nanny about what happened to Maleficent, and the rest of her story that was untold. Prince Philip is still holding off the giant dragon. Maleficent is relentless. She breathes fire, flies, can teleport, has AoE from lightning, minions, hellfire, and she's a dragon! But Prince Philip, he's a prince. He's got singing abilities, riz, a cool horse, and he's a Nepo baby. The fairies continue to support the prince throughout his battle against the Dark Fairy, and Philip throws the magically enchanted sword at Maleficent the dragon's chest. It pierces Maleficent, drawing blood. After being struck with the magically enchanted sword, Maleficent falls into a fiery pit off the cliff. She snaps her jaws one more time at the prince before falling dead in a giant puff of purple smoke. Her scepter was never found. Her body was destroyed, and Maleficent was gone. Or so she thought. This is when the events of the Descendants books, movies, and media will take place. You can skip it if you want, but trust me, it's way more interesting than you might think, or I wouldn't have put it in the video. After being destroyed at the hand of Prince Philip's sword, Maleficent woke up on the Isle of the Lost. The Isle of the Lost is home to all of the dead, then resurrected Disney villains. The Isle is a floating island over a killer crocodile-infested sea. There's a magical barrier keeping all the villains inside. Other villains, along with Maleficent, were banished here to have a fate worse than death. There's no magic on the Isle of the Lost, and some of those resurrected have human forms. For instance, Pain and Panic are now humans, but Iago, Flotsam, and Jetsam are all animals. On the Isle of the Lost, all the villains of all the lands are confined to quite a small space. There's poor water quality, not much natural energy, poor transportation, poor infrastructure, and no public safety programs. Most of the villains either work selling moldy food slop that they stole from the trash boats of the Kingdom of Auradon, or they sell items they stole from other villains on the Isle of the Lost. The island homes, including furniture and clothing of the inhabitants, is mostly made of trash or recycled materials. Property damage, theft, vandalism, and chaos are all common everyday activities. Interestingly enough, along with the resurrection and rehabilitation sequence of these villains, their homes, magical weapons, and key items to their life were resurrected as well, but not in their original form. For instance, Cruella's home Hell Hall has manifested into the Isle of the Lost, but it's moldy, decrepit, and far from the glory of the Hell Hall of the past. So even though magic isn't available for use for the villains due to the barrier, they are all much closer to magic than they might realize. But enough about the Isle, and back to Maleficent. Maleficent awoke on the Isle of the Lost. Maleficent almost immediately took her role as Queen of the Isle of the Lost, overseeing all of the villains who lived there. Even in a place with no magic, Maleficent was known to be the most evil. The evil queen challenged her for her position, and Maleficent never forgave her. She banished the evil queen. Maleficent has her minions still following her on the Isle of the Lost. And although the minions are a bit dumb, they pledge loyalty to Maleficent, and some of them work at the slop shop. However, it is known that they often write to the Kingdom of Auradon to request refuge on the Isle of the Lost by claiming they have goblin blood. Maleficent was impregnated by a regular old human being. A human she refers to as a worthless and weak human being with no specialties at all. She dated or married this person for about 4 years. He walked out on Maleficent right after the birth of their child. This definitely normal human person and Maleficent's offspring was named Maleficent, and was called Mal for short. And for the sake of this video not getting even more confusing than it already is, I will stick to calling her Mal as well. Mal has purple hair and green glowing eyes. Actually, the real reason Mal is called Mal is because Maleficent doesn't think Mal is evil enough to have her full name, Maleficent. It is also important to note that her daughter Mal is also a dark fairy, just like Maleficent. And also like Maleficent, Mal is part dragon. Maleficent and her daughter Mal reside in a warehouse overlooking the Isle of the Lost. They have multicolored glass windows with stains, not stained glass, and thick gray stone walls and floors. It overlooks the central hub of the Isle of the Lost. It's a rental. It's called the Bargain Castle. When Maleficent's daughter, Mal, was 5 years old, the two were walking in the market together when a minion tripped over and fell, spilling their basket of apples. Young Mal went to help the minion, picking up the apples, but Maleficent kicked the basket and publicly berated her daughter for trying to be good. Maleficent then went home and screamed at Mal for hours through a locked door about how Mal wasn't evil enough to be her daughter. Maleficent always expected her daughter to be as evil as possible at all times. She only praised her if and when she won the Wicked Prize at school each year. Mal won this award for the first time in kindergarten. The following year, when Mal was about 6, the evil queen threw a giant party for her daughter Evie, inviting all the villains on the Isle. She sent invitations via vultures, and made sure not to invite Maleficent or her young daughter Mal. The party was a lavish adventure, where many children in attendance were given their own special pet. These pets included children of Flotsam, Jetsam, Iago, and more. Little Mal watches the incredible party through the glass windows and becomes extremely jealous and left out. She calls for her mother, who sends her minions to break up the party, and Maleficent banishes both the evil queen and her 6-year-old daughter, Evie. The evil queen and Evie then live together in a remote and desolate part of the island by themselves for the next 10 years. Mal suffered a lot at the hands of Maleficent, and Maleficent always made sure to make sure Mal feels like she isn't good enough. For Mal's 8th birthday, Maleficent gave her an apple core, and for her 10th birthday, Maleficent gave her some fingernail shavings. Maleficent told her daughter that these were objects for spells, but remember, the island they live on has no magic, so to Mal, this is just trash. Throughout her daughter's young life, Maleficent was often cruel and calculating. Her daughter's only worth was based on how evil she was and how many evil acts she was committing. Maleficent grew small and somewhat weaker through these years of not having access to magic. But that was all about to change. One day, around the age of 16, Mal throws an event to try to trick Evie, the daughter of the evil queen. This party was organized by Mal, daughter of Maleficent, even though her mother hates parties. Carlos, son of Cruella de Vil, sets up decorations and provides the venue, the Hell Hall. And Jay, son of Jafar, and thief extraordinaire, steals party supplies, including barely rotten food, spicy cider drinks, and other Isle of the Lost delicacies. During the party, Evie, daughter of the evil queen, is hanging out with Carlos in his room at the Hell Hall. He shows her an invention that he made that gets extra TV channels. and his invention temporarily cracks the entire barrier of the Isle of the Lost. Little do they know, this invention activated many magical sites and objects on the Isle, including, but not limited to, gargoyles, the Isle of the Doomed, the Cave of Wonders, the Thorn Forest, the Forbidden Fortress, aka Maleficent's castle, and more. Other notable magical activations include Maleficent's Dragon's Eye Scepter of Darkness and Maleficent's trusty companion Diablo, who has now been unfrozen from his former stone form and is already on his way to Maleficent. Mal comes home from the party around 2 a.m., and Maleficent is not pleased with her. Not because she's late, but because she didn't commit enough evil atrocities at the party. Diablo, her mother's one true love, is already back on Maleficent's shoulder, like he never even left. Maleficent informs Mal that her staff has awakened, and she wants her daughter to go retrieve it for her, because Maleficent cannot be bothered to do such a dangerous task. She uses this moment to manipulate her daughter into thinking she must retrieve this task from wherever it is on the Isle of the Lost to earn her approval. Maleficent warns her daughter that the staff is cursed. Whoever first touches it will fall asleep for 1,000 years. Mal and her companions do reach the staff, but before Evie can grab it, Mal stops her so she doesn't get cursed. Mal instead grabs the staff herself and briefly passes out for a moment. Because Mal is part dark fairy like her mother, she has dragon blood within her, so she only passed out for those few moments. But almost anyone else would have passed out for 1,000 years. Diablo, who had been following Mal's group to retrieve the scepter, quickly swooped in and grabbed the ancient weapon, returning it directly to Maleficent himself. When Mal returns home, Maleficent is disappointed. She knew her daughter saved the evil queen's daughter instead of letting her get cursed. Maleficent shames Mal. The staff is broken and doesn't produce magic because it's missing its signature green talisman, but the Dragon's Eye Scepter was back in the hands of Maleficent. A short while later, Prince Ben, son of Belle and the Beast, creates an educational exchange program. The children of villains have a chance of showing they can be good by going to school in the kingdom of Auradon with the other kids of heroes. Mal, daughter of Maleficent, is chosen for this goodness program, along with Jay, son of Jafar, Carlos, son of Cruella, and Evie, daughter of the evil queen. Maleficent tells Mal and her friends that they will be attending after she breaks up a dance number that they're performing in the streets near the bazaar. Maleficent gathers Mal, her friends, and their parents to discuss the plan. Maleficent sees this as an incredible opportunity for her daughter to prove just exactly how evil she is. The Kingdom of Auradon's prestigious school, Auradon Prep, is also home to the Cultural Museum, which holds relics and replicas of famous heroes and villains from all the lands. Maleficent knows that both the fairy godmother and her wand are there. Maleficent orders her daughter to get to the fairy godmother's wand and use it to fully break the barrier on the Isle of the Lost, so she can escape with the other villains. Mal very reluctantly agrees to this task. Well, she doesn't exactly agree. Maleficent used her green eyes manipulation magic, and even though Mal also has this power, she was not strong enough to use this power against her mother, and so she had to agree with what her mother told her. Maleficent opens her evil fridge in her even bargain castle kitchen to reveal a spellbook that she passes down to Mal. The Book of Spells will not work on the Isle of the Lost, but they will work in Auradon. It is worth noting, according to the books, there's no food inside of the fridge, only ingredients for spells. Glass jars of eyeballs, mold, that kind of stuff. The electric blue fridge also has rainbow alphabet magnets that spell out revenge and fools, which is relevant later. Maleficent pulls Mal onto the balcony to overlook the Isle of the Lost, and then tells her that the entire fate of the free world is on her shoulders, so don't mess it up. It's a lot of pressure on a young girl. Mal and her friends travel via magical limousine through the barrier under Maleficent's watchful eye. The limo glides across the water to the Kingdom of Auradon, where the kids are enrolled into Auradon Prep. Only a few days after arriving, Mal and her friends try to break into the Cultural Museum to try to steal the fairy godmother's wand. There's a giant statue of Maleficent inside the Cultural Museum, along with statues of other villains and their magical weapons. Some items are real, some are replicas, but the replicas are replaced with the real item usually after the item is found. Maleficent's actual spin wheel that she used to curse Aurora is even in the museum. The villain kids break in and knock out the guard, but they fail to retrieve the wand after Jay accidentally activates the security system in the museum. Soon after their failure, the kids have a Zoom meeting with their parents to update them about the situation. Maleficent is not pleased with the progress. She is insatiable and still wants more from her daughter. And yes, I did say Zoom meeting. In Auradon, they have computers, Wi-Fi, cell phones, texting, social media, and many TV channels. While on the Isle of the Lost, there is no stable Wi-Fi, no state-of-the-art phones, there are dusty, subpar used laptops, and dangerous live electrical wiring, and other technological leftovers from the kingdom. So in Auradon, the villain kids enjoy video games, social media, cell phones, and Carlos enjoys experimenting, building even more elaborate inventions. Mal decides to use a love spell from her mother's spellbook to enchant Prince Ben, son of Belle and the Beast. Ben falls for her immediately, but it is important to note in the novels, both Mal and Ben have magic premonitions of each other before meeting, and it was these premonitions that led Ben to have the idea to let in the villain kids from the Isle of the Lost in the first place. The cookie love spell wears off after Mal and Ben take a dip in the enchanted lake, but Ben doesn't tell Mal that he knows about the spell. Ben does like her. She is literally the girl from his dreams, and he wants to see if she'll come clean on her own. He wants to give her a chance to become good. Because of the love potion, and also mutual feelings, just want to put that out there, this is not a forced situation, Ben knows about the spell. He's no longer under the spell, and he is still pursuing Mal. It's not the most healthy relationship, but Mal is now in a relationship with Prince Ben, but she feels sad for tricking him. Prince Ben is about to be crowned the king of Auradon for his 16th birthday, and he'll take over his father's role as the ruler of all of the United States of Auradon. Mal is now his date for his coronation, which in this context and in this universe, being the prince's date to his coronation is very similar to a suggestion of a promise ring that could fast track into a royal engagement. On the morning of the coronation, the evil queen, Cruella, Jafar, and Maleficent are all watching a live broadcast of the event on a shoddy vintage television set from the sitting room of Maleficent's bargain castle. We can tell this is her house because of the thorny vines on the walls and the glass windows with stain. The parents have all eyes glued to the screen, munching on popcorn, anticipating the event, which is hosted by Snow White. When Snow White is on the screen, the evil queen throws popcorn at her. When the fairy godmother's wand is shown on the screen, which is used to knight Prince Ben for the coronation, Maleficent goes wild. She cannot contain her excitement. Mal and Prince Ben arrive to the coronation in a horse-drawn carriage. Mal is wearing a very lovely dress designed by Evie, and Ben is wearing a royal blue and gold suit similar to that of which his father, the Beast, wears. Mal tries to give Ben an anti-love potion, and after taking it, he tells her that he knows that she put a spell on him, and that he likes her, and that he hasn't been faking it. Maleficent sees her daughter in the carriage with the prince, and starts gloating about how her daughter duped the prince, and is so close to stealing the wand. Maleficent starts evil cackling and running through the bargain castle, informing the other villains that today is the day. They're about to escape and unleash evil upon everyone. The parents continue to watch the live stream of the event on TV. Prince Ben walks down the aisle with Mal, and then Prince Ben gives her a golden ring with the Beast's insignia. This is a very special gift given to him by his father, so it's very symbolic that he's given this ring to Mal. The prince then parts ways to be crowned alone. His parents tell them they're proud, and Ben walks down the royal blue carpet. Fairy Godmother's wand is taken out of the case briefly to crown the prince, similar as someone would use a sword to knight someone. As soon as the wand is out, Maleficent yells at the TV, yelling at her daughter to take action. But when the time comes, Mal doesn't grab the wand. Someone else does. Jane, the fairy godmother's daughter. She was upset her mother wouldn't let her use magic, and she decided to take the wand for herself. The wand starts going wild, and it blasts a giant hole into the Isle of the Lost, breaking the barrier for a moment. In the chaos, Maleficent calls for her scepter and then disappears in a puff of green smoke. Back at the coronation, the fairy godmother's wand is still sparking out of control. Mal wrestles the wand out of Jane's hands. Prince Ben asks for Mal to give the wand back, but she refuses. Jay, Carlos, and Evie run from the stands to come down and help support their friend Mal. They stand behind Mal, and Prince Ben stands between Mal and the crowd. He talks her down to try to stop her from using the wand on anything or anyone. He says that he believes she can be good. Mal comes to the realization that she might be her mom's daughter, but we aren't our parents. She would rather go to school and be with Ben than try to force herself to be evil. But then, in a plume of green smoke and a very dramatic entrance, Maleficent appears at the coronation. Mal tells her to go away, but Maleficent laughs at her. Mal throws the fairy godmother her wand, but before the fairy godmother can cast a single spell, Maleficent uses her magic to freeze time, freezing everyone in the coronation except herself and the villain kids. Maleficent uses this time pause to flirt with the Beast while he cannot do anything about it. Very gross. Maleficent grabs the fairy godmother's wand directly from her hands and shoves it up her nose. Also gross. Then Maleficent uses the fairy godmother's wand to steal the golden ring that Prince Ben bestowed to Mal. Maleficent even slaps Prince Ben in the face when time is frozen. Mal gets upset with her mother, saying that love is not a weak feeling and that she isn't weak for feeling love. But Maleficent continues to shame her daughter and makes her feel bad for having feelings of goodness. Mal then recites a spell to get the fairy godmother's wand from her mother. This wand is a wand of good intent, so it follows Mal over Maleficent. Jay, son of Jafar, tries to take Maleficent's staff from her, and even though he's very physically strong, she takes him down easily. Maleficent then morphs into her dragon form. She's gigantic in her dragon form and takes up most of the coronation hall. Because Jay tried to take the staff, Maleficent chases him down, flying after him. She tries to destroy Jay with dragon fire. Jay and the villain kids start running away. Evie steps between her friends and Maleficent and shines her magic mirror into the dragon's eyes. During the moment of chaos, Mal steps forth, wielding the fairy godmother's wand against her mother. But instead of using the wand, Mal uses her green eyes manipulation against her mother's own dragon form. The support of her friends and her partner made Mal strong enough to have enough love in her heart for the magic of good to triumph against her mother's magic of evil. It's a G-rated Disney show, y'all, okay? Time is unfrozen for the fairy godmother after Mal uses her magic, and Maleficent is turned into a cute little purple lizard, about the size of a bearded dragon. Fairy godmother informs her that her mother turned into the size of the love in her heart instead of the hate in her heart. The fairy godmother gives her back the golden ring, and she unfreezes time for everyone else in the coronation hall. A royal servant goes to put the glass wand case over Maleficent the lizard, and Mal informs him to be careful with her mother. Even though she's an evil, petty lizard, Mal still holds love in her heart for her mother. Maleficent remains in Lizard Prison, a small, aquarium-like enclosure which is currently being safeguarded under constant surveillance of dozens of security cameras. Mal and her friends briefly return to the Isle of the Lost, and since Maleficent is gone, Jenny Gothel, daughter of the one and only Mother Gothel, stole Maleficent's clothes. Although no one on the Isle went through Mal's stuff because they think she's stronger now than her mother, and they're terrified. Even though Maleficent is peacefully asleep on Lizard Rock, she's being accused of destroying a neighborhood kingdom of Camelot. Under rule of Artie, son of none other than King Arthur, a giant purple dragon is ravaging Camelot, so it makes sense that people would assume it's Maleficent. King Ben assures everyone that Maleficent is under control and under constant watch. Ben even moves Maleficent the lizard to the museum for safekeeping to ensure no one will bother her. Meanwhile, Mal and her friends are taken to a surprise party on the Isle of the Lost, where a ragtag group of ex-villains called the Anti-Heroes tries to convince Mal, Jay, Carlos, and Evie that they want to be good like them. This Anti-Heroes Club is kind of like Dumbledore's army, and Yensid, the literal Yensid himself, has helped organize this group, including the 4 villain kids, because there's a quest afoot. Yensid is actually a teacher at Dragon Hall, one of the main schools for villains on the Isle of the Lost. Even though he is traditionally a good wizard, Yensid feels compelled to teach the children of the villains, claiming that everyone deserves a shot at having a good education, regardless of their upbringing. Yensid informs the kids that the 4 magical evil villainous talismans have been awakened. The Golden Cobra, an exact replica of Jafar's staff, which is a living weapon with a mind of its own. The Ring of Envy, Cruella's large green ring, which makes people feel small and useless. The Fruit of Venom, the Evil Queen's apple, which fills your mind with insecurity and negative emotions, along with the power to use those feelings against other people. And the Dragon's Egg, the most powerful talisman of them all, with the ability to manipulate others at will and has the capability for universal dominance. The villain kids are successful in their quest to retrieve Maleficent's Dragon's Egg, and it was revealed to be Madame Mim's purple dragon form, not Maleficent destroying Camelot after all. I really wonder why no one considered that to be an option, considering Merlin, Arthur, Artie, and Madame Mim are all from the same land. It is noted that Jafar currently has possession of a magical but very broken clicker that he stole from a goblin. This clicker is similar to the one owned by the limo driver from the first Descendants movie. It allows one to get through the barrier at the Isle of the Lost, but it's broken. For now. A few days after Mal gets the talisman from the Catacombs of Doom, she is back in Prince Ben's arms, watching the Seaside Festival live for the first time, rather than watching on a rickety TV set on the Isle of the Lost. The talisman is burning a hole in her pocket, literally, and Mal is very much aware that she's carrying a dangerous magic object. Even though the talisman was disarmed, Mal was supposed to return it to the fairy godmother, but she hasn't. Just like she was supposed to turn in her mother Maleficent's spellbook, but she hasn't. The talisman has been feeling hot recently, and the lines across the stone have started to multiply. Mal and Ben then browse the wares of the Seaside Festival. Mal takes interest in a sea magic necklace, and Ben offers to buy it for her. The salesperson tells Mal how all their necklaces contain magic, but the most powerful magical necklace was Ursula's, which was destroyed. If you watched my Life of Ursula video, you would know that Circe the Witch destroyed Ursula's necklace directly. You can watch that video if you want for more information on those events, but our focus is on Maleficent's life and her magic weapons. The villain kids, Jay, Carlos, Mal, and Evie, go to turn in their talismans to the fairy godmother. It is noted that the fairy godmother visibly shudders when she sees Maleficent's dragon egg. There are painful memories attached and a long history between the two. The fairy godmother puts the talismans in the Cultural Museum for safekeeping after disabling them, and each talisman is returned to its original object. When she uses her wand to disable them, though, wild magic is released, and for a brief while, that barrier on the Isle of the Lost is broken. And the staff wasn't as deactivated as she thought. Meanwhile, back on the Isle, word is spread that Maleficent has been turned into a lizard. Even Uma, Ursula's daughter, has heard the news. Uma and her crew are entering a contest to win a giant pirate ship. And Uma also overhears news that Yensid, a teacher at Dragon Hall, knows where Ursula's necklace pieces are, and if Ursula's necklace is put back together, it has the ability to repair and find magical objects. King Triton's trident went missing recently, and Mal and her friends try to find it, but Uma finds the pieces of the necklace first. And then, Mal uses time manipulation. Yes, she reverses time. You'd have to be a pretty high-level dragon fairy to bend time. And Mal has this ability. More on that later. Mal gets the trident first and returns it to the museum with all of the other magic heirlooms and lingering relics. Evie even gives up her magic mirror, and Mal is supposed to give back her mother's spellbook, but she doesn't. She keeps it. And a quick note here, there is a side animated series called Descendants Wicked World. Some people wonder if this is part of the canon. This animated series is canonical to this same timeline Descendants universe and the novels. However, the timing of this series is a little strange. Freddie Facilier, the daughter of Dr. Facilier, is already in attendance of Ordon Prep during Descendants' return to the Isle of the Lost. While in Wicked World, we see the scene where she's actually invited to attend the school. And in Book 4, Rise of the Isle of the Lost, we see Dizzy, daughter of Drizella, granddaughter of Lady Tremaine, is put under a curse by Uma to be more wicked. But then in Descendants 3, she's picked to go to Ordon Prep. In Season 2, Episode 3 of Descendants Wicked World, Princess Audrey tells Mal and Evie about talismans, and they don't seem that shocked or surprised compared to Freddy Facilier and all of the hero kids. However, Maleficent has hidden Mal's own jewel, or talisman, somewhere on the Isle of the Lost. Mal ends up finding her gem, but it's cursed, so she cannot have her jewel presented to her at the Jubilee celebration with the other Auradon Prep students. The gem ends up cursing Mal, which causes her to give Jafar's staff to Yvonne, Yzma's son. Yzma's son collected a bunch of gems like Infinity Stones and added them to Jafar's staff, and Mal defeats him and steals the staff from him to break the curse on her own gem. And her gem, jewel, talisman, is presented to her at the Jubilee. And each of the villain kids and hero kids get their own jewel as well. So the Wicked World series takes place sometime after Descendants 1, the movie, and sometime in between/during Descendants Book 2, Return to the Isle of the Lost, Descendants Book 3, The Rise of the Isle of the Lost, and Descendants Book 4, Rise of the Isle of the Lost. If you're interested in reading or watching Descendants to learn more, I will put the order in the description section below, and if you're looking down in the description section, please take a moment to subscribe. There is actually an uncomfortable amount of Descendants Wicked World discourse, and the show is wildly popular, way more popular than I thought. Anyway, I'm sure no one is confused right now, so let's return to the story. Maleficent's lizard kingdom is moved to her daughter's dorm room at Auradon Prep. Her cage now holds a miniature spin wheel, a green armchair, and a replica of her blue fridge at home, with revenge spelled out in the rainbow magnets. There's also a cute little magnet of the spin wheel and a sign that says, "Do not feed my mom," which was likely a sign made by Mal herself. It is noted that Maleficent is much, much smaller now. In the Disney universe, it's typical that villains grow when they're more powerful, so this is very fitting for her. From the corner of her aquarium, Lizard Maleficent watches her daughter and Evie prepare for the Royal Cotillion, where Mal is to become an official lady of the court. Mal has been carrying around her mother's spellbook and has been using unsolicited magic, even though she's been told not to use magic unless it's required. Mal uses magic for everything: her hair, her royal assignments, and to enchant herself to seem good. She enchants her hair to be more blonde and even performs speed reading spells on herself so she can learn royal rules faster. The final straw was a grand lunch she made. She told Ben she made it herself, but it is revealed that she had been using magic for all of her good deeds. Ben is disappointed in her, and Mal doubts herself and her path. She gives Ben his ring back and decides to leave. She grabs a small blue box, pokes some holes in it, grabs her lizard of a mother, and runs away back to the Isle of the Lost with her mother Maleficent in a tiny little box. Ben follows her to the Isle of the Lost, but he's captured by Ursula's daughter Uma. Uma tells Mal that she must come to her pirate ship to get King Ben back, and she must give Uma the fairy godmother's wand. Mal and her friends 3D print a fake copy of the wand, using a 3D printer made by Carlos, and Lonnie, Mulan's daughter, follows Mal, Carlos, Evie, Jay, and Dude, Carlos's talking dog, to the pirate ship to meet up with Uma. At the pirate ship, Uma tells Mal to test the wand. Mal pretends to comply by waving the 3D printing wand and casting a super legit dog talking spell on the already talking dog. And since Uma doesn't know that this dog can already talk, Uma thinks the wand is real. Uma tells Harry Hook, Captain Hook's son, and Gil, son of Gaston, to give King Ben back to Mal and her group. Harry complies, and Ben is set free with the other villain kids. Uma then tries to use the fake wand, but she realizes it was a fluke. Everyone on the ship gets into a sword fight, with Mulan's daughter Lonnie absolutely annihilating these nautical clowns. And after a few close calls, the villain kids escape into the limo with Ben to leave the Isle of the Lost. But Mal accidentally leaves behind her mother's spellbook. Uma finds it and shows up to the Royal Cotillion with Ben on her arm. True love's kiss between Ben and Mal ends up breaking the spell, and after defeating Uma, Mal gives her mother's spellbook to the fairy godmother. So just for clarification right now, Maleficent is a lizard in a box. Her scepter is on display at the Museum of Cultural History, and her spellbook is in the hands of the fairy godmother. This is probably her lowest moment. Time passes, and Maleficent lives out her days in solitude. Maleficent, bored as hell as a lizard, feels alive and rejuvenated from feeling a scourge of hate coming from her dragon's eye scepter. It's It's none other than Audrey, Princess Aurora's daughter, her own granddaughter to be precise. Audrey's jealous of Mal. Audrey dated Prince Ben long before he came king, and Audrey grew up thinking that she would be the queen of all of Auradon. But then Mal came into the picture. Audrey doesn't know Mal and Ben had visions of each other as each other's true love, and so Audrey despises Mal. Audrey broke into the museum to steal the queen's crown of jewels, but Maleficent picks up on her evil intentions through the scepter. She beckons Audrey to the scepter, and Audrey's heart is plagued with evil once she touches it. It's important to note here that Audrey is related to Maleficent, and technically carries part of her because her mother, Aurora, was born from Maleficent. So Audrey is one of the only people in the kingdom that can touch the staff without dying on the spot, essentially. Audrey, daughter of Aurora and Prince Philip, steals Maleficent's staff from the museum. Her heart turns cold and evil. Audrey uses the staff as it's intended, with evil intent. She turns people to stone, casts lightning, and puts people to sleep. So Mal needs to come up with a way to fight someone with the dragon scepter, and she turns to the only person in the Isle who used to be stronger than Maleficent. Her and her friends return to the Isle of the Lost, where Mal goes to visit her father, Hades. But Bonnie, you said earlier that her dad was a regular human. Well, he is. Hades lost all his god powers and his god status when he woke up on the Isle of the Lost. However, this does mean that Mal is technically part dark fairy dragon and part demi-goddess, which is probably why she's so powerful, able to go into a dragon form so easily, able to bend time so easily, and use manipulation magic at a very, very young age. Mal wants to use her father's talisman to defeat Audrey because the only thing more powerful than Maleficent's dragon's eye scepter is Hades' Godfire. But right now, Hades is powerless. It's even stated in Book 4, Descendants, Rise of the Isle of the Lost, that without magic, Hades is just a person in a jacket. Now, a lot of people in the fandom think it's a retcon that Hades and Maleficent would be together or have a child together, but here's my thesis argument on why Hades and Maleficent would absolutely hook up, and you can stay mad about it. Unlike most Descendants fans, I'm geriatric, and I grew up watching a little something called House of Mouse, where all the Disney heroes, all the Disney villains, everyone who's anyone would go to chill at Mickey Mouse's theater nightclub in Toontown, the House of Mouse. Characters would order drinks, order food, get into arguments, comment on each other's lore and stories, and then sit in the comedy booths to watch Disney shorts together with you, the viewer. It's a hilarious show, and it's a staple in the Disney canon. In House of Mouse Season 3, Episode 23, Halloween with Hades, the god Hades sees Maleficent and instantly falls for her. I'm talking love at first sight. He immediately goes to court her, but she slaps him with her scepter. Mickey Mouse convinces him to try to be nice to her instead of evil to try to earn her affection. So Hades turns into a gray himbo, wearing Mickey Mouse's classic fit, complete with yellow shoes, red little mini shorts, white gloves, and mouse ears. And if you're someone listening to this video right now, please take a moment to look at this shit, because it's bonkers. This was Mickey's advice for Hades to be good and dress exactly like him. Why do Hades' nipples look like Sanji's eyebrows? Captain Hook also flirts with Maleficent, and she hits him on the head with her scepter as well, completely uninterested. Hades returns to Maleficent in his very strange and horrifying outfit, and tries to flirt with her again with negative 9,000 Riz levels. And this man asks her out on a picnic. Diablo nips his beak at Hades for the pathetic attempt. So Hades loses it and throws fireballs at Mickey Mouse. A natural response, I'm sure. And Maleficent is very pleased by this. Maleficent loves this new side that she's seen from Hades, and the two proceed to sit together at the same booth, both very interested in each other. Maleficent also lived in Hades' old castle on the Forbidden Mountain from her early 20s until she died. Hades wields blue fire, Maleficent wields green fire. Even in Kingdom Hearts we see the two together in multiple scenes. Maleficent comes to help Hades in a fight against Hercules, but he tells her that this is his fight, and she doesn't need to come and help, which implies she's helped him before, or that she's watching over him. Remember back at the start of the video when I said Maleficent even appears in The Simpsons? Well, Hades actually appears in the same episode. Many Disney characters are showcased in the Simpsons episode, but still, it's very interesting that Maleficent and Hades are at the same bar again. Not to mention, Maleficent is a fairy, very connected to nature, born from nature, with nature, similar to Persephone, so there are endless parallels. So it actually makes perfect sense, in my opinion, for Maleficent and Hades to get together if they had the chance. I know Maleficent says Mal's dad is a human, but technically, Hades is a human after he loses all his magic. And Maleficent puts such an emphasis on the human part, it's almost like she's using sarcasm or making fun of Hades for losing his magic. What do y'all think? And why would they break up? Well, after Hades and Maleficent got together, a little someone named Chernabog came onto the scene, and this demon wanted the Dragus. Anyway, back to the Descendants. Mal, the dark fairy dragon demigoddess and technical princess of the underworld, respect the name, wants to use her father's talisman to defeat Audrey because the only thing more powerful than Maleficent's dragon's eye scepter is Hades' godfire. Hades gives Mal the talisman, and as Mal, Evie, Carlos, and Jay go to leave the isle, Harry, Hook, and Gil jump through the portal. They throw the talisman towards the waters, and Uma retrieves it with one of her tentacles. Mal lies to Uma and her crew. She says if they help, she'll make sure the barrier is removed so the villains can live with everyone else. So Uma, Harry, and Gil join the other villain kids. They all travel to Auradon to take down Audrey with Maleficent's staff. At Auradon Prep, Audrey has spelled most of the school under a sleeping curse using Maleficent's staff, and she turned powerful figures like the fairy godmother into stone. In an emotional moment, Mal ends up coming clean about her lie. Uma throws Hades' talisman into the water in anger, and it is rendered useless because Mal cannot relight it on her own. It can only be reignited with another powerful magic relic like Uma's necklace. Uma and her crew leave Mal behind, and even her friends shun her. And then Audrey turns her friends to stone. Mal runs after Uma, begging for her help, but Uma refuses. Audrey takes Dr. Facilier's daughter Celia to the top of a school tower and uses her as a shield. Mal goes full dragon to try to save her, but she can't fight the dragon's eye scepter without Hades' fire being activated. Uma sees Mal wanting to sacrifice herself for Celia, a fellow villain kid, and she decides to help Mal. She activates the talisman, and Mal uses her dad's godfire to take down Audrey wielding Maleficent's dragon's eye scepter. Hades is then brought in chains from the Isle of the Lost to wake up Princess Audrey, who fell into a curse after using the scepter for so long. After seeing that her father, a known long-term villain, would be capable of doing a noble act, Mal decides to destroy the barrier between the Isle of the Lost, and the villains are able to use magic again, and everyone's able to be friends for the first time. Several months pass. King Ben and Mal are getting married for their royal wedding. It's Evie who finds Maleficent in her lizard form and brings her to the wedding. Dude, the talking dog, and the lizard scurries off. Hades ends up setting the wedding on fire by accident in an attempt to calm down his ex-wife, and he then retreats back to the Isle of the Lost, with Mal following behind. Thankfully, Ben found Maleficent and brought the lizard to Mal and Hades, who are on the Isle of the Lost. Hades flirts with his ex-wife, and then he decides to hold on to her for safekeeping. Mal misses her own royal wedding in Auradon, so she decides to have her wedding on the Isle of the Lost instead. And so, Maleficent, the purple lizard, who is slightly larger now, watches her dear daughter Mal marry the love of her life and become queen of all the lands, surrounded by all her friends and family. In Descendants' royal wedding, tribute is paid to the dear Carlos, who is no longer with us. Carlos was played by the late Cameron Boyce. May he rest in peace. I would like to take a moment now to pay tribute to those who've passed. It would be a disservice and a disrespect to talk about Descendants without bringing up the tragic passing of Cameron Boyce. Cameron was born on May 28, 1999, and passed away on July 6, 2019. He was 20 years old. He was a bright light and an incredible singer, actor, dancer, and overall performer that helped build the legacy of the Disney Descendants. During his life, he was an advocate for the arts, for bringing awareness to the global water crisis, and he was an advocate for ending gun violence. He passed away due to complications from epilepsy. Epilepsy affects millions of people in the USA, and even more worldwide. It is important to bring awareness to SUDEP, the sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. If you would like to get involved, you can find more information through the Cameron Boyce Foundation, where you can help donate to dedicate more research and information towards fighting epilepsy. You can find a link in the description section below. Cameron's legacy shall live on through those that know him, those that remember him, and those who enjoy memories of him. We will now have a moment of silence for Cameron Boyce, who brought life to Carlos in the Descendants universe, as well as Eleanor Audley, who brought life to the character Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty. Thank you for watching.